simply go down to the Bureau of Land Management. You say, hey, Bureau, hey, Land Management, I have this property. I need to get the land patent on my property. The land patent is the original deed for your property. That's what you want. You want the original deed. So you tell them, they're going to ask you, what's the township? It would be better if you go to your assessor's office and tell them, I need the township that my property is in, than just to show up at Bureau of Land Management, okay? When we were talking to those wonderful people at the Bureau of Land Management, I told them, I say, hey, look, Bureau, hey, Land Management, there is a map that we need. He said, what map are you talking about? The M as in Mary, T as in Tom, P as in Paul, MTP, okay? And you're going to tell them I need the MTP map. They're going to say, oh no, you're not getting no MTP map. No, they're not. They're going to give you the MTP map. Ladies and gentlemen, your original land patent for your property is only going to cost you about maybe $5, everything included, all the other pieces. Even if you got 3 certified copies, I would suggest you have at least 3 certified copies. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm going to tell you to do at this time is what you will need to do. You will take that land patent, you will do a UCC on your patent. It is real simple. Trust me, nobody else is doing it this way. You're going to put for the debtor on your UCC form, and this is 100% legitimate because I'll show you why. Pay attention to what you're reading. The Federal Reserve Bank notes and the emergency war script, the Federal Reserve Bank notes were now backed by the assets of the bank. No, the bank notes, not the Federal Reserve notes, but the Federal Reserve Bank notes. The assets of the banks are the mortgages held by the people on their property. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we've read this to you where we have showed you that they will represent, be 100 cents on a dollar and represent a mortgage on all the properties of all the people of the nation. Okay? See? It tells you right here. This is Congressional Record, March 9, 1933 to March 9, 1933. This is your actual Bankruptcy Act, people. You keep hearing about the bankruptcy of the United States. That's why you hear me refer to it as the Emergency Bankruptcy Economic Relief Act of March 9, 1933. Under the new law, this law right here, the money is issued to the banks. By whom? The United States Treasury through the U.S. Mint. In return for government obligations. See, the bank accepts the government's obligations and the government gives them the money. Then the bank sort of charges you for the money, interest. But pay attention to this word right here, government obligations. What are government obligations? Bills of exchange, drafts, notes, trade acceptances, and bankers' acceptances. The money, this new script will be worth 100 cents on the dollar because it is backed by the credit of the nation, the full faith and credit. It will represent a mortgage on all of the homes and other property of the people of the nation. Okay, so when you do your UCC, what you're going to put for the organization name in item 1A, you're going to put, pay attention, the United States, not United States of America, no, the United States. Okay? Why are you going to put the United States and not the United States of America? Because that's not the government. See, the United States government is a corporation, so you're going to put the United States, that corporation. Okay, not United States of America. I wouldn't do that. Ain't no need for you to do that, so stop it. Anyway, give me a second. I got to pull up something. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the code right here we're going to go to, okay? See, obligation and other securities of the United States. This is section 8, so we have 2 sections to go to. My phone's about to ring. Oh, no, it isn't. The song went off. Hey, just my imagination. Y'all know I got an imagination, huh? Now this is by Leo Thomas. Okay? No, y'all thought it was, no, this ain't that group, y'all. Okay? The term obligation or other security of the United States includes all bonds, certificates, and indebtedness, national bank currency, Federal Reserve notes, Federal Reserve bank notes, coupons, United States notes, Treasury notes, gold certificates, silver certificates, fractional notes, certificates of deposit, bills, checks, or drafts for money drawn by or upon authorized officers of the United States, not the United States of America, of the United States. Stamps and other representatives of value of whatever denomination, and canceled United States stamps. Guess what this is right here? You see this act right here? When they did this, this was 1948 that this was done. Do you know what this act is? Does anybody know what the act of June 25th, 1948 is? This is the Judiciary Act of 1948. The first Judiciary Act was 1789. First Congress, Judiciary Act, September 24th, 1789. Okay? So now that you have that, because I prove everything I say, this is the second Judiciary Act. Now they said any of these things under any act of Congress. Well, what's an act of Congress? Ladies and gentlemen, this was an act of Congress. When they told you that your notes would be worth 100 cents on a dollar and be backed by the mortgages of all the people of the country. See, it will represent a mortgage on all of the homes, including your home. Well, it's a government obligation, right? Look, servicing of insured notes outstanding with investors. Let's go down here. The holder of the endorsed note and holder will endorse the insured note as follows. How do we know it's a government obligation? Because it has government insurance. Okay? Wait, hold on. Insured note. Hold on. Let's do the research. Remember, the government backs up every note. Insured note. Any promissory note or bond evidencing an insured loan, regardless of whether it is held by Rural Development in the insurance fund or a private holder or Rural Development as a trustee. Okay, it's an obligation of the United States. You are to endorse it, pay to the order of the United States, reversionary, without recourse, and deliver, the holder will deliver the endorsed note to the blah, 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 Director of Finance Office. It is an obligation or security of the United States. The United States guarantees all home mortgages. We've already shown you about the FHA, how they insure all those loans. Remember, this is an act of Congress here. Okay? Remember, Senate document number 43 of the 73rd Congress, the same Congress as the March 9th, 1933 Emergency Bankruptcy Economic Relief Act. Remember, we learned here, pay attention, obligations of the United States. That's what it's called, ladies and gentlemen. Obligation or other security of the United States is defined as your mortgage is a security and obligation of the United States, ladies and gentlemen. That's why they back it and insure it. Okay? Pay attention. Issued under any act of Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an act of Congress. Remember, the ownership of all property is in the state, and so-called ownership is by virtue of the government, i.e., pay attention. That means that when you do the land patent, you receive the patent from the government, Bureau of Land Management, and what you do is you now place that patent on the record. The land patent is superior to those warranty deeds, statutory deeds, or those deeds of trust that are issued by the bank. Remember, the bank already receives their payment. That's why they put pay to the order of their bank, because they receive their payment from the Treasury. No, they don't. Yes, they do. And that's the problem. People don't understand it. So I need you guys to understand it. Okay? That's why on the UCC in item 1A, you will put the United States. Okay? Just that simple. And you'll put the address for the Treasury, because that's the fiscal agent for the United States. They'll say, well, the Federal Reserve is. No, the Treasury is. United States Treasury, Washington, D.C. is the address you're going to put. And then in line number, I believe it is 9 and 10, one of those two, you're going to put other debtor. You're going to put the county and the state that you live in. Because ownership is in the government, state and county. And if you ever want to go to court on a quiet title, none of them will show up. The bank has no claim. Okay? The bank has no claim. And none of their claims will be superior to the land grant, because you receive it from the United States. Okay? This is the Act of Congress, March 9, 1933. Okay? The money will be worth 100 cents on the dollar. It'll be backed by the credit of the nation, an obligation of the United States. It will represent a mortgage on all the homes and other property of all the people of the nation. But the courts say this is not the way things is. That's right, because they just say it. They don't show no law. They don't show an act of Congress showing that this is not the way things is. We're showing you an act of Congress where this is the way things are. Watch this. I'm just going to do this. Okay. Now, do you guys see the Emergency Banking Act? Emergency Banking Relief Act. Okay. See, it was, notice 114 Congress. It says a partnership to strengthen home ownership. It's all a joke, ladies and gentlemen. You need to understand what's going on. You cannot own property unless you do it through the land patent. Okay? Other than that, it's still the government's. But when the government issues you a patent for the land and you record it, it's no longer theirs. Now look, Congress does hereby declare a serious emergency exists, and that it is imperatively necessary, speedily, to put into effect remedies of uniform national application. Ladies and gentlemen, you'll see this thing is called H.R. 1491. Please understand, this is the March 9th, 1933. Okay, now notice what it says. This action regulates rules, license, orders, and proclamations heretofore and hereafter taken, promulgated, or made and issued by the President of the United States or the Secretary of the Treasury. Excuse me? A proclamation issued by the Secretary of the Treasury? What the? Wait, hold on. How can a Secretary of the Treasury issue a proclamation that would be binding on everybody else? Pursuant to the authority conferred by Subdivision B of Section 5 of the Act of October 6, 1917, the Trading with the Enemies Act, as amended, are hereby approved and confirmed. Excuse me? That's right. During time of war or during other period of national emergency declared by the President may, okay, through any agency, including the courts. Ladies and gentlemen, administrative courts or executive courts, as they are. Congress is operating in its executive capacity. What do you mean its executive capacity? Well, the president in a time of war or national emergency is the supreme ruler in his capacity as commander-in-chief. Okay, because they've correlated a national emergency with the so-called war power. Okay, just that simple. Ladies and gentlemen, your note is an obligation of the United States. You need to pay that note or that obligation to the order of the United States. Okay? That is the problem. And because people have not been doing that, understand this is what's going on with you guys in court. Let's get rid of you. This is what's going on with you guys in court so that you get it because you're not getting it. And I understand why you're not getting it. Ladies and gentlemen, the reason why all of you are losing your homes is because you haven't secured your interest. The courts asked a lady last week, can you give me a legal reason why they can't take your home? See, it represents a mortgage on all the homes and all the other property of the people of the nation. That's why you give them a copy of that endorsed note. Oh yeah, the note's already been tendered as required by statute. What statute requires them to tender the note? Oh, Code of Federal Regulations, Title 7, 1901.508. That's the one. And inclusive of its servicing agreement. See, you guys, you haven't been adding the servicing agreement. The servicing agreement says that when you tender that note, they have to send it to the Treasury. They have to send it to the Director of Finance Office. That's the United States Department of Agriculture. Okay, and then they receive a Treasury check. So that's how they get paid, not by you. You were never supposed to be making monthly payments. You only did a promise to pay. Remember, the obligation becomes an obligation of the United States. You need to tender that obligation to the United States, but you haven't done that. That's why the banks get to come and take your property, because you didn't do your part, because you don't know how to do your part, because nobody taught you. The ownership of all property is in the state. What state? The United States and the actual state. That's why you're registered with the county. That's why when you go to BLM, they will tell you, well, we need to know what township it's in, because they don't go by addresses or parcel numbers. That's how the county registers your property. So you want to know how to deregister your property? Land patent it. Oh, by the way, when you do the UCC and you fill it out, you can file that on the county record in your land record with the quote unquote land patent. Now, what they'll tell you, oh, we're not going to allow some counties, not all of them. Wait, what do you mean I can't file that here? There's a UCC1 form, and you need to pay attention to item number 13. Item number 13 says this financial statement is to be filed for record or recorded in the real estate records. So, of course, you file these because that's what this uniform document is for. The state recognizes this UCC. You file UCCs. Wait, if you can tell me that you don't file UCCs in this county, then I'll by all means walk away. Ladies and gentlemen, you can get a writ of mandate from the Superior Court forcing them to file. Okay? Really is that simple.